Yeah, Zidane. What is this? What is this? It's the Farts and Crap Show. It's your host Danjo here. Hope you guys are all doing well, and basically this video is about this. So, in case you guys are unfamiliar, I already did a video about this, more on that later, but this is Final Fantasy IX running on the PlayStation Classic in high-res mode without the high-resolution hack, which causes some visual problems. And before we get too deep into this, this video is for educational purposes only, and for all you emulation enthusiasts out there who aren't really happy with the modern release of Final Fantasy IX. So this core is called PCSX Neon, and it is a variation of PCSX Rearmed, which is a variation of PCSX Reloaded, a PS1 core for RetroArch, which specifically the PCSX Neon one has pretty huge advantage over the standard PCSX Rearmed, which is basically a staple of a modded PlayStation Classic, because it has the pre-cache CHD CD access method. Now, I've already talked about this in a previous video, by the way, and we have a good amount of information to go over, so let's get to the specifics. And this video I'm referencing, I called it PS Classic, still awesome in 2023 update. This was the thumbnail. I'll put a link. I might put a card. Honestly, I don't know how many people actually use cards. The link will be in the description. And hey, as a bonus, the link is also right here. So either way, depends on which platform you're watching YouTube on. One of these is going to be helpful. But yeah, I went over a lot of info in that video, and also there's kind of a rant in that video as well that's kind of related. So yeah, it's a longer video than this one, but yeah, there's still a lot of information in that video, and I don't want to rehash all of it because that would take a good 20 minutes. So yeah, in case you're unfamiliar, go check out that video for some of the I would say initialization steps. However, if you haven't modded your PlayStation Classic yet, or you don't have a PlayStation Classic yet, a lot of this is not going to apply to you. So, however, it is a similar situation if you run RetroArch on Linux, because I believe all of the popular mods for the PS Classic are Linux based. So the version of RetroArch, version 1.8.8, is the same. Some of it might apply, some of it might not. So, but yeah, for other info, check that video. But yeah, we got some information to go off of, to review. Wow. It's been a long day, but I finally got this set up correctly. So, basically, one of the main things you'll need is CHD Man, which is a program that is a compression method for converting basically PS1 ISOs or game files, which usually they're in .bin by default, into CHD. Now, the big benefit of this is performance on this core on the PS Classic, because I love the PlayStation Classic because once it's modded correctly, it can do so many cool things, including kind of deliver on the promises that Sony pretty much directly implied that the PlayStation Classic would be good for. That is, a fast and easy modern way to play PS1 games. So, basically, this is where a quick overview of CHD, man. Once you have it downloaded and unzipped and everything, it has instructions as well. Not in every language, but I speak English and it has English instructions, and they're pretty straightforward. Basically, you want to put the game files into the input folder, well, subfolder under the CHD man folder. That way, when you actually run the CUE-GDI-ISO to chd.bat, which is a Windows batch file, it will run a command prompt to start the conversion process. Now, as you can see here in File Explorer, disk 4 is in the process of being compressed. So at the moment, Windows is reading it as 0 kilobytes. But as you can see, the other disks are finished, and it by default puts it in the parent folder when it's complete. Now the process can take a while, and it can handle like multiple files and games at once. And this is kind of a thing that became more well known because of recent handheld emulation devices like the Miu Mini, some of Ambernick's offerings, the Powkitties, all of those. So because that's more of a commonplace thing now, people playing early 3D games, PS1, Saturn, N64, like on these tiny little emulation handhelds, this is kind of becoming more well known, but this was a thing that was very much not well known because, as I said in the other video, you cannot use the CHD pre-cache method for multi-disc games. But it actually works. And there's another little step that I didn't know about because it's very much not straightforward or explained in a lot of ways, and actually even I wasn't just like pulling that information out of nowhere either because I couldn't get it to work. The tutorial that I was following actually also said it does not work on multi-disc games, but I confirmed that it does work with Final Fantasy 7 and 9, and yeah, it definitely works. But the big deal here, though, is that because of the pre-cache performance boost, Final Fantasy 9 actually runs pretty much flawlessly on this hardware, which was not possible before. Like, I tried for hours and hours and hours and hours over multiple days, could not get it to run without, like, it was basically unplayable. The audio was terrible, it couldn't keep a solid frame rate, it looked bad even at native resolution with like no upscaling or improved anything. Even like stripped down as much as possible, could not run decently. So this is the main key here to getting the CHD files to actually be recognized and run correctly within RetroArch on this core, is you need a .m3u file. And essentially this is just a text file. Like, you can just write this in Notepad and it'll save by default to .txt. You can just change the extension to .m3u. It'll be totally fine. This is essentially replacing the .cue files that RetroArch would ordinarily use in PCSX Reloaded or Rearmed. It's just a simple file delivering a string to the emulator to tell it where the actual game file is. So basically you just need them all in the same folder. I would make a parent folder that's just the name of the game, which I didn't do initially with Final Fantasy IX, but when I was testing it with Final Fantasy VII, because I thought the parent file and .m3u file had to match the game file, that's actually not accurate. And it doesn't matter because when you load the game, you actually are selecting the .m3u as you would a .cue. So it's going to remember the name of that instruction as the game name, not where the file is and what it is. But for the sake of organization and making things nice and clean, I would do it this way. But yeah, the name, I would just do the name of the game .m3u. And you have to be very careful as you type this in the file, because the names have to match exactly. No extra spaces, no nothing. Like if you want to, you could just copy and paste each one and then hit enter, go to the next line, and then paste the next one, and then go to the next line, then paste the next one, and just Control S, just save it, and just keep it on there. It should look like this example almost exactly. And for the sake of it being different, and I definitely use like file systems and subfolders and stuff like that within RetroArch just to make things easier, I did clarify to label it as the name of the game and then in parentheses or parentheticals if you prefer CHD. So I knew for future reference it's the CHD versions of those game files. So the other really big advantage here, modded PS Classics don't always work with like high-speed external drives, so a lot of people recommend you use a USB 2.0 flash drive or a thumb drive. Personally, I've been using a 3.0 without any problems, but it is a lower capacity. Like, I think this one's only a 32 gigabyte. So yeah, these are the original versions of the game files, the .bins and the .cues. And it's a little bit different with the file system because each disk needs its own .cue. There might be a way to like combine them into one, like in the previous example, but I don't like this as much. But anyway, the total game file size is 2.65 gigabytes between all 4 discs, because yeah, famously Final Fantasy IX was a massive game on the PS1. Very few games were 4 discs. I think Legend Dragoon was 4 discs, but yeah, at most of the time it's 3. But yeah, 2.65 gigabytes. Massive game. And that's in the original file size. After being converted to CHD, we get that down by a whole gigabyte. And then some, to 1.44. So it's a really great compression method where you get both performance increases and vastly reduced file sizes. And sometimes, depending on the games, it's actually less than half. But I was very curious on Final Fantasy IX because it's so, like, over 2.5 gigs, like, almost, I don't know if any PS1 games got that big, honestly. Like, sometimes on some of the multi-disc games, like the last disc would just be like a little bit of data, and like most of the data would be on the first disc. It depends on, you know, depends on a lot of things. But yeah. So you're gonna have a lot more space on that little bitty like 32 gigabyte or 64 gigabyte. I probably wouldn't go above 64, honestly. Thumb drive for all kinds of other things. Like, because personally, I like to back up my games, and there's tons of ways to back up your own games. Whether it's like PS1, PS2, like there's a lot of cartridge readers and stuff for like Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, even N64, Super Nintendo, that's been around for a long time, NES, Genesis. I'm actually not sure if I've ever seen a Master System one. But anyway, there are a ton of ways to back up your games digitally now. So this is another really great method to save space in general. Like, and honestly, I haven't found a single downside to CHD. That doesn't mean I'm going to delete my original burns from my Final Fantasy IX game, because honestly, I'm not even sure if my original discs play anymore on original hardware. Like, because I just keep it safe. I keep it tucked away. Like, you know, that's the other great thing about backups, is you don't have to risk damaging your original copy. So, but, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the nitty-gritty info there. And again, like, I'm not going over every single thing about, like, PlayStation Classic modding and all that stuff. And even in this video, I didn't. The video I was referencing, which, again, there is the link as well. It's still down in the description if you want to do it that way. Or, you know, you can just search on this channel, PS Classic Still Awesome in 2023, and it'll come up. But, yeah, that is going to do it for that portion. So, let me just show you guys basically what I'm using here. In case you do want to go this method specifically on the PS Classic, let me just pull up the menu here in RetroArch and kind of show you the specific settings. So it has, let's see, so it's just all of these. These ones don't matter as much. Do have to change this, obviously, to pre-cache CHD. You will have to restart it. Making such a big change might actually also crash RetroArch. So before or after you make all the changes, be sure to click on the top to actually save the game options file. And then for good measure, go to the bottom to overrides and save your game overrides. So you might have to change like a bunch of different things. And honestly, one of the really cool things about the original PS1 version versus the modern version of Final Fantasy IX, it did have DualShock support. In the modern version, and I talked about this in a recent video on Final Fantasy IX because it was one of the RC Samples videos, there's only digital input. So 8 directions, D-pad, you have to press a button to like run or walk. That's how Final Fantasy IX was, or 7, sorry. Because at the time, the DualShock wasn't really like normalized yet, it was pretty new. But yeah, you have full analog control in 9. Move the analog stick a little bit and you just walk just barely, you know, all the way, and you run. And it's 360 degrees of movement, not these 8 directions, you know? And there's tons of other things, but let me get back to the actual options. So yeah, region, auto, BioSelect, auto, and that's the other great thing about the PS Classic with PS1 games, is it has an authentic PlayStation BIOS file. I know, I said BIOS, that's an old habit, it's pronounced BIOS, I know. And I would still keep this to off. I would definitely use enable second memory card shared, because it is shared by all games, but it is also in shared memory context. So even if you do experience a crash, if something is saved to the second memory card, it is basically safe. Like, you aren't going to randomly lose it, as some games that can happen if you save in slot 1. So, dynamic recompiler, always. Personally, I found 77 to be the sweet spot. This requires a lot of tinkering, and honestly, anytime you change the clock speed, I would reboot the game anyway. Dithering pattern to on, which helps in actually a few graphical things that's present in Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 on the PS1. Frame duping I would keep off. Frame skip I found is better if you keep it to auto and threshold, and then just keep it at the default value of 33%. If you want to mess with that, go ahead. I found threshold works better than auto. Don't know why. Frames, this actually doesn't matter, because this is only if you are doing the method of fixed interval. So it doesn't look good anyway. Don't do it. Display internal FPS. If you want to show interlace video, if you're playing on a CRT, this might look better. Personally, I've tried it on, I've tried it off, on my display at least, and in the direct capture it doesn't seem to make any kind of difference. But yeah, I am using the enhanced resolution, which is really great. So that's why it's the twice the native internal resolution. So for a lot of things it's going to look better, but 2D elements are generally unaffected, which is correct. For some games you have to do the enhanced resolution speed hack in order for things to run at a decent pace, because it's literally rendering twice as much. Audio reverb effects I found has to be on in order for most audio to sound correct. For sound interpolation, yeah, cubic is the best one. Simple just sounds bad. I would go with Gaussian, personally. It basically simulates the PS1 sound hardware. So, CD audio and XA decoding you don't need either for Final Fantasy IX. I would keep all of these to off, except for assume GTE registers unneeded and disable CPU GTE stalls. Now, toggle these on and off as needed. Try them both on, try one on, try both off. Personally, for now, I found it's a little bit better. These are just additional speed hacks to keep things running a little bit smoothly. Again, you might see a couple glitches or whatever. This one claims some games will run too quickly. This happened maybe once, and it wasn't even that. It wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, this one they say may cause rendering errors. And I believe all of these are written, like all these descriptions and stuff, by the libretro team. So I could be wrong on that, but anyway, in case you're not sure what an option does, just read the description, read it over again, get familiar with things. Again, there are tons of tutorials and tons of information out there on the internet for all this stuff, and like, I can't summarize all of it even within like a couple hours. Like, this is news to me. Even just having this run kind of correctly. And I've been tinkering with this for like 2 or 3 years now. But yeah, this is another big reason on Final Fantasy IX, the original PS1 version, that is sorely absent in the modern release. The text boxes, they used to have character. It was working with the PS1's native resolution, but they kind of twisted it intentionally to stylize it. Like, I don't know. In the modern release, the text boxes are just like sans serif, generic, Arial, Calibri, whatever, flavorless text. It's terrible, and it looks so out of place because of the resolution of the pre-rendered backgrounds. On top of that, the characters are almost scaled too high, in a way. Like, because of the upscaling thing, the HD thing, you can see a lot more details on the characters and the 3D elements of the game. The pre-rendered backgrounds are going to look a tiny bit better, but not by much. And I talked about this in the recent video too, about like Final Fantasy IX on the Switch, same as like PS4 and whatever. The characters almost look like too smooth because of the way they're upscaled, to where they don't fit. They don't seem to belong on the actual like areas where they are. If that makes sense. It looks out of place. And even just if you want to like compare, you know, this video to that video, there's a few things that are going to be different. Obviously, like the frame rate is going to be a little bit more solid on the digital version, quote unquote. And however, this is not a game that played at 60 frames on the PS1. I think it targeted 30, but there were places where there were a significant amount of frame drops, like on the world map, or tons of other places. But, whoop. Yeah, if you touch the, I don't know, fumes, I guess. But this is where it used to be terrible. Like, the battle sequences used to run so bad, and that happens still sometimes, where like certain sound effects won't sound exactly correct. But aside from that, like, it runs perfectly. And the music plays perfectly. And that was my biggest complaint about this, trying to get this game running on this hardware. Because the PlayStation Classic is an ARM-based system. Like, it's an ARM V7, which version 7, I guess. 4-core, doing this off memory. SBC, that's the term they use. Single board computer. System on a chip, essentially. And it's just not that powerful. Like, you would assume Sony would have been, you know, had the foresight to actually use hardware that could, you know, effortlessly run PS1 games. But, no, that didn't happen. No idea why. Especially since I put Tekken 3 on there. And Metal Gear Solid. Like, games that are a little bit more demanding of the PS1 hardware. I mean, if you want to run them at, you know, their intended frame rate. And I mean, you could overclock this a bit more to get the battles, like, a tiny bit smoother. But I mean, this is very close to how it ran on the PS1 hardware. Or even the PS2 hardware. Like, and because I said what before, like 77 for the internal clock? Right. Yeah, you can... I would maybe even take that up to 80, I guess. Probably. It goes... I think 100 is the max. Yeah, 100 is the max. Definitely wouldn't take it up that high. I don't think any games actually good with that. And that graphical glitch happens after battles sometimes and just goes away. I wouldn't worry about it. There we go. That's how you do that. Just trying to remember. I've played this game so many times. Like, still one of my favorite games of all time. Like, not even just retro games, but like, just in general. Oh, Mage Masher. Which I already had, but later in the game you do need to have more than one of those to get a really good weapon, so you're supposed to go left first. And actually, yeah, another reason I would probably go up to 80, maybe even like 82 or 84. I think you have to use... Oh, I remember how to do this. Hold on. Steel, Black Magic, Thunder. But yeah, the UI in this version of the game just looks so much better too. Like, the modern version is based on the mobile version, I believe, that released for Android and iOS. And the user interface is just ugly. Like, I could never get used to it. It was just, I mean, bad. I mean, yeah, it's comes down to preference, you know, aesthetics and stuff like that, but I've never encountered anybody that prefers it. Wait, isn't there a thing back here? We not there yet? Oh, it might be the next screen. Maybe? There's like a better hidden secret off to the left, and I don't remember... Oh, I hate these guys. Yeah, sometimes that'll happen. So... And overclocking usually does help prevent like slowdown for situations like that, but it's probably partially the dithering too. Like that effect kind of has to work harder. When there's larger effects on screen, at least on this game. But it's so nice to actually like be able to play this with an analog stick again and actually have analog movement. It is... I can't even fully... Oh, it is the screen. Yeah, it's that off to the left. There's a few other things. Oh, yeah. One of the other things I wanted to say, too, about this version of the game, the fact that there is a mono option, it's not there in the recent version, which, you know, why is that good? Well, again, if you're playing on a device that actually has mono output, like if you're playing on a CRT, certain CRTs didn't even have two speakers for left and right audio. They just had the one. So, you know, that would actually be a helpful option. But yeah, the user interface, like, it just looks, at least to me, like so much better than the, wow, she didn't come with anything. That was, wait, I didn't have the other... Did I not have an extra wrist? Oh, crap, I was supposed to get one from... Or is that what that is? A glass armlet? It might be one of these treasure boxes, actually. Treasure chests, whatever. Is it not? Really? I thought that was one of the ones. Oh, the interact UI thing. Yeah, how in the modern version of the game, it tells you if somebody, like, plays Tetramaster, which is kind of annoying because then it takes away one of the main... I've always thought the rod looks like a hamburger on the top. It negates one of the great reasons that was such a great idea. Is because when you go up to talk to NPCs, you can talk to them with either square or X. And square would be to basically challenge them to a card game. And if they didn't play cards, then it would just initiate the usual talk dialogue, which was great. Because then it actually gave you a reason to talk to NPCs. Like, just, you know, just randos walking around. Because in previous Final Fantasy games, that was a thing. Like, it's always been a thing since the first game. It's like when you get to a town, or like, I say town in the generic sense, just any place with like a lot of people, just talk to everybody. And like, that was a thing that not a lot of people liked, obviously. Because it can get a little tedious. But yeah, in this game you can just talk to whoever and challenge whoever to cards. And like, there's a collecting aspect to it, like if you want to get every card in the game, and this too, like if you farm specific enemies, you have a chance to get their card. Like, not every single enemy in the game, but there's 100 different types of cards. Like, it's kind of great from, like, I guess like a completion kind of a standpoint, you know? So yeah, like, and that's one strength of this game, is it doesn't tell you what the exclamation point over the head is about. It just tells you when there's something to do. Like, you can interact with this, or you can talk to this person, or you can challenge them to a card game, or you can pull this switch, or you can kick open this box. It doesn't tell you what it is, it just tells you there's something. Which is a lot more than Final Fantasy VII did, because that game, like its predecessors, 1 through 6, didn't tell you anything. Like, as far as, it didn't have any indication that you were next to an item. Like, very famously, I'm glad I was right about that, actually. Very famously, at the beginning of Final Fantasy VII, you can loot one of the guards on the ground. Oh, Blizzard, nice. For extra potion. Like, right at the beginning of the game, as soon as you have control. The game makes no indication of this. It was always contextual. Or, in the really early Final Fantasy games, just, you know, press confirm on like every tile. If you want to find everything, really. So it's one of those quality of life things. It's one of those very gamer friendly things. And so just one of the aspects they took to make this game less tedious. And so for a lot of people, like, there's been actually quite a few people I've talked to where they've never played a Final Fantasy before. And I was like, play 9. Like, the modern version isn't perfect, but it is the easiest way to play the game, and I still recommend it to people. But like, I say this a bunch. You guys may have heard this before. I've said this to a lot of people. A good art style goes a long way. Like, and this game has a fantastic art style. Like, it's just... it's still my favorite for a reason. A lot of reasons. Like, just a fantastic... foul-mouthed Demoul. Love it. Love it. It's great. Anyway, Mogster is teaching us stuff again. Oh yeah. This serves as one of those optional tutorial things, which if it's not your first time playing the game, you can just skip it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, that's gonna do it for today. Again, if you want to do this method, like if you have... wait, did I say... I said okay, right? Anyway, if you have a PS Classic, you're looking at modding it, or you've thought about modding it before, but then you maybe decided against it because, you know, what's the point? Well, this is one of the points. And like, it can do all kinds of stuff, but like for me personally, this was a thing that I've been wanting to get running correctly for a long time. And by the way, that I use slot 2 because that thing I mentioned earlier with the options enable second memory card, which again, shared memory, it's more stable than using slot 1. Yeah, I just wanted a method of playing the PS1 version of this game without having to actually pop the disc into my PS2 or having to power on the PS3 to play my PSN version of it. The what do they call them? PS1 Classic. Because on the PS3 you could, you know, get PS1 games in their original format, basically. And, yeah. Because if I can, I would much rather just power on the PS Classic, especially in the warmer months, because yeah, my PS3 really pumps out some heat, and I don't want to potentially damage my copy of Final Fantasy IX. So anyway, thank you all for being here, even though it's my fourth copy. Well, third right now, but yeah. Anyway, it's my only physical copy though. But thank you all for being here, guys. Greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed. And of course, before we get going, a very special thank you going out to the current Farts and Crap Show members, which at the time of recording is Novellas Draconis. But if you want to be incredibly awesome, support the show a bit more directly, and get in on all those membership benefits like Novellas Draconis does, check out the join button down below or the Farts and Crap Show Buy Me a Coffee page. Either way, it's $3 a month to get into all the action, onto the members wall, and into the members choice polls that determine the members choice polls that determine the series that we do here on the channel. By the time you guys are watching this, the next Retro Classic series is already decided. That poll ended on August 16th, 2023, but we will have another one coming up in September, so stay tuned for that. And it's honestly just really appreciated, all the channel members, and it's the best way to support the show more directly. So that's gonna do it for today. I will be sure to timestamp this video because I'm sure some people will be confused why it's 45 minutes long. And then if, you know, I can just easily be like half of its gameplay. Like, oh, gotcha. It just, you know, make more sense. But again, if you want more reference for, like, again, kind of general quick reference for this whole PCSX Neon, like, pre-cache CHD stuff, check the other videos talking about earlier. But again, here on YouTube there are tons of resources for learning more about RetroArch or PS Classic modding or PS1 emulation, the technical stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there is no, like, quick answer for any, well, basically, pretty much. So, but yeah, it's fun. It's good. It's rewarding for sure, because sometimes you might find a better method to play a game that you really love. But anyway, thank you for being here. Until next time, guys, take care, and I hope you all have a beautiful day.